Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got yet another bite-sized review for you today, one of the heaviest support options, and we're going to be looking at the Tesseract Ark. Now, quite an expensive model because it's a Forge World model. It's £73.50 in the UK or $114.50 in the USA. It's going to be costing us at a base cost of 170 points, and there are some further upgrades if you wanted to take some. So let's get on to some keynotes of the datasheet. Of course, it's a vehicle model, so it's got the core keyword, it can fly, and it's also got that quantum shielding keyword on top of that. Now it does have a degrading stat line, but it goes between 3 and 5 wounds. It drops down to an 8-inch movement, ballistic skill value of a 4+. Now the attacks also drop, but you're not really using this thing in melee. Then when it goes down to 2 wounds remaining or less, the movement is only 4 inches and the ballistic skill is a 5. It's not where you want to be with this thing. Hitting on 5s is not a good time. Now unfortunately, it's only got 10 wounds, which I think is a little bit under par for me. Especially being 170 points. The 17 points per wound there I think is a little bit too pricey, but we'll be getting on to why this thing costs as much as it does. Now it has a natural toughness of 7 as opposed to toughness 6, and it also does have that quantum shield ability, so it can't be wounded on less than a 4+, and of course that 5+ invulnerable save on top of that. Now further to add to that, it's also got the containment field save, which is actually a 4+ invulnerable save, so that 5+ quantum shield invuln save kind of doesn't really matter because it has a 4+ invulnerable save and also still has the benefits of not being able to wound on less than a 4+ with that quantum shield ability. Now if this thing does get destroyed, it does have the explode ability and it's on a 4+, not a 6+, so units within 6 inches will suffer D3 mortal wounds, but it's a 50% chance of that actually happening, so just be aware of that if you've got it in your own lines. Now as for the weapons, it's got quite a lot of flexible weapons here, so we're going to go through them to begin. The main weapon it has is the Tesseract Singularity Chamber. Now this actually has 3 completely different profiles, which is why it's so flexible. So you select one of these profiles to shoot with per shooting phase. Let's go through them. So the first one is the Particle Hurricane. Only 12-inch range and it's Assault D6. Strength 4, -3 AP and 1 damage. It automatically hits because it's effectively like a flamer weapon. And if you're firing at a non-vehicle unit, it always wounds on a 2+. So not too bad in Overwatch really because it automatically hits. 2+ to get rid of models perhaps, because that -3 AP is pretty decent, especially with units with a low armor save and no invulnerable save. Also worth noting that because it automatically hits and it's an assault weapon, you can actually advance with this thing, still fire. Okay, normally it's a -1 to hit penalty, but it automatically hits, so who cares? Now as for the second weapon, it's got the Seismic Lash. This is a longer 24-inch range weapon. It's still Assault D6, but this time it's Strength 5, -3 AP and 3 damage. So really good at taking out Terminator models. Now that -3 AP goes to -2 AP because of Armor of Contempt going up against those models. But if you do manage to get a wound through, 3 damage a pop, yeah, Terminator models are going to go down. Again, you can advance with this weapon because it's an assault weapon, but there will be a -1 to hit penalty. It does normally hit on 3s, it will go down to 4s. Then on to the third weapon, which is the Solar Fire. And this is a 36-inch range weapon this time, and it is heavy D6. So if you're firing this into combat, there will be a -1 to hit penalty. But this time it is Strength 8, -3 AP, and the damage is D6. Now what I like about this weapon is there's no blast ability attached to it. So that means it can be fired into combat, where if you look at say the Doomsday Ark or the Canoptic Doomstalker, they can't fire into combat with those blast weapons because you can't fire blast into combat, which is kind of why I never use those models, but this model can. And also another good point is it doesn't have to remain stationary in order to use this high profile weapon. Again, going back to that Doomstalker and Doomsday Ark, in order to use their best strength, which is Strength 10 with their weapon, they've got to remain completely stationary. There's no flexibility with the movement, it's pretty much a sitting duck at that point. This thing can move around 12 inches and still fire its best weapon without the blast keyword. I like it. The only drag about this though is still D6 attacks with the D6 damage, so D6 into D6, I really hate that. That's something they really need to change in our next codex. Now that isn't where it ends there in terms of the weaponry, there is still some extra weapons to take. You've got the options here. Either you're taking 2 Gauss cannons, you're either taking 2 particle beamers, or you're taking 2 Tesla cannons. Now if you're taking the 2 Gauss cannons, they're going to be 15 points per cannon. That's going to be 30 points combined, making the whole unit 200 points. So it gets a little bit pricey at this stage. But those Gauss cannons are 24-inch range, heavy 3 per weapon. Don't forget you've got 2 of these, so that's going to be 6 shots. At Strength 6, -3 AP, and the damage is D3. So I like to fire these at Space Marine models. Okay, it does drop down to -2 AP, but that damage D3 usually takes away those models. Now the particle beamers, they are free of charge. You can take 2 of them. They're only 18-inch range, and each one is assault 6, so you're going to be getting 12 shots with these. Strength 5, no AP, and only 1 damage, so very basic. There's no exploding 6s or anything, it isn't Tesla, but we're not paying for anything. If you're going up against factions with a low armor save, these can be a decent choice. You don't need the AP, you don't need the damage, so yeah. Now the third option is the Tesla cannons. Now these cost 10 points per cannon, so that'll be 20 points for the pair. This one's got the best range out of the 3 weapons, it's 30-inch range. Heavy 3 again, so similar to the Gauss cannon, so that's going to be 6 shots in total. Strength 6, no AP, 1 damage, but every 6 to hit will score 2 additional hits, so exploding 6s there. Again, going up against factions with a low armor save, with only 1 wound per model, this is going to be really ideal, and those exploding 6s are just going to give you even more wounds for your opponents to deal with. Now in fact, if you're going up against toughness 3 factions such as Eldari, this is probably the preferred option because you're wounded on a 2+ as opposed to a 3+, whereas the particle beamers are only strength 5, so they're probably better served against toughness 4 but with that low armor save. And yeah, I'd save the Gauss cannons for Space Marines and power armor. Okay, so let's check out some stratagems available for the Tesseract Ark. The first one is Curse of the Pharaon. So if it does get destroyed, spend a command point and automatically explode. Now you do already have 50% chance of it actually exploding anyway on a 4+, but if you wanted to guarantee it, 1 TP, bang. The second one is Stellar Alignment Protocol. This one's also 1 command point, and it effectively stops you from being bracketed on the bracket table until your next command phase. So if you've only got say 2 wounds remaining, you don't want to be hitting with a ballistic skill value of a 5+, you want to be hitting on 3s, right? Maybe even 2s with a Mine Will Be Done ability, because this is a core unit after all. So yeah, you can spend 1 command point, get the best table, get the best movement, get the best ballistic skill, you don't need the attacks. Now there is a third one here, I'm going to list it for you, but you don't actually ever need to use it. It is for the Quantum Shield vehicles. It makes their 5+ Quantum Shield in one save go to a 4+, but don't forget he's already got a Containment Field in one save for that 4+, so you should never be using this stratagem. Dynasty wise, we've got the Mephrit Dynasty to begin for that extra 3 inches to all the weaponry. There's quite a lot of weaponry here, quite flexible with the weapons, so having that extra bit of AP on top of that as well can be a good way of going. Then the Hilak Dynasty is an okay option if you're playing for objectives, but personally you're probably just better off taking a Ghost Ark or maybe even Annihilation Barge. Both of them are much cheaper, and the Ghost Ark in particular has got a lot more wounds with 14. Well, there is a custom option if you wanted to go custom, which is Interplanetary Invaders, which allows vehicles to fall back and still fire at a -1 to hit penalty, or they can fire their heavy weapons into combat without that -1 to hit penalty. This vehicle will be making use of that if you wanted to. It's not the most favoured custom code, but I thought I'd mention it. And lastly, with the command protocols, there is one option here that I'd look at, which is very similar to the Interplanetary Invaders in fact. It's the protocol of Conquering Tyrant, and it's directive number 2, being able to fall back and still shoot. Now to summarise this model, first of all, don't forget that you can use the protocol of Sunstorm, because this is a core unit, so it can still be doing the actions such as Ancient Machineries, because that just requires a core unit. Even though that kind of feels a little bit gamey, having a Tesseract Ark doing an action with the Ancient Machineries, but it is doable, and you don't want to be full go when you're shooting, so use the Sunstorm protocol to be able to do the action and still fire. Now, it's not really a model that you want within engagement range. It's too expensive to be tying up models, leave that to the Ghost Arks. But the main problem I've got with this model is the fact that it's 170 to 200 points. It's too pricey for me. It needs to be dropped down right to 130 points at base cost, which will put it to 160 points if you fully upgrade it with the Gauss cannons. I think that's the right price range. 200 points is just way too much. I do, however, like the fact that it's got no blast ability attached to the weapon, making it be able to fire into combat, and also being able to move around freely and still being able to fire its best weapons. I think that's a really good advantage for this vehicle compared to the other heavy support options. Now, as for the 10 wounds being quite low, you could argue the fact that it's got the 4+ Containment Field in one save kind of makes up for it, as well as the Quantum Shielding. Now, there's not that many models that have both the Quantum Shield ability as well as the 4+ Invulnerable save naturally. You normally have to spend a CP in order just to get that. So the fact that it's got that naturally kind of makes up for the fact that it's only got 10 wounds. But then the next problem is you've got to look out for the mortal wounds, because there's not really a way of this model blocking those mortal wounds unless you're going with the Zerican Dynasty. That way you've at least got a 5+ Feel No Pain save against mortal wounds, but mortal wounds could potentially be this model's downfall. And finally, we can't forget the fact that it's got the most flexible weapon in our actual codex. Well, it's not in our codex, is it? It's on a Forge World website. But it's got the most flexible weapon that we've actually got, taking out all completely different kinds of targets, whether it's Terminators, whether it's Hormagaunts, whether it's a Riptide. It can literally go after anything at range. Okay guys, so let's get on to the Planet 40k rating today for the Tesseract Ark. This one's tricky. I don't think it's middle of the road, but I don't think it's top tier. So I'm going to be going with a Planet 40k rating of 3.5 stars.